Okay, so what about the pollution management of tropospheric ozone and photochemical smog? Remember, photochemical smog is a whole bunch of chemicals, primary and secondary pollutants, but largely made up of tropospheric ozone. So that is ozone that is formed in the troposphere from our pollutants, particularly from the burning of fossil fuels. So what can we do to manage this? Okay, again, we go back to our pollution management model every single time. Human activities, release of pollutant, long-term impact. So our strategies for solutions, the first two, to change human behavior and regulate the pollution at the source. These are our preventatives. And then finally, cleaning up the environment. So after it's all been released, what do? That is our remediation. So what do we do for smog management for changing human behavior? Well, we can provide alternatives. Remember, we can penalize people or give them incentives. The SkyTrain in Bangkok was fairly recently extended, and they're planning on extending it further. So we've increased our public transport, and it's a very popular transport choice for people in Bangkok. And you may not even realize it, but there's actually car share in Bangkok. So you can go onto the car share website over here and sign up, say what you need, what your commute is. Usually people split the cost of the gas, so it saves them money. And then they can drive into town. And of course, that reduces the overall traffic. So it works for the individual in reducing their cost. It works for the community in reducing the number of cars on the road. So changing human behavior, our first step. Okay, then we try to regulate the pollution at the source, so we can, even though we're going to be producing that pollutant or carrying out that activity, let's try and minimize it. So a couple of examples here to manage smog are driving hybrid cars and encouraging the use of hybrid cars on our roads. So this is where when the car is idling, maybe just sitting waiting at the traffic lights, it's actually running on the battery, and only when it needs to get a little bit more oomph to drive, it switches then to using a bit of fossil fuel. So it's highly efficient. It's using a lot less fossil fuel, therefore a lot less emissions for how far it goes. And another thing are catalytic converters, and these have been the law in cars in the US since the 1970s, and Thailand since the mid-1990s. And these absorb a lot of the pollutants so that what's coming out of the exhaust isn't very polluted. Of course, you get very old vehicles, and especially here in Thailand, it's only been implemented for the last 20 years. So if somebody has an old truck, it doesn't have a catalytic converter on it. We know that regulations are hard to enforce here in Thailand, and you see all that black smoke coming out the backs of buses. It's unlikely either that it has a catalytic converter, or perhaps that the catalytic converter needs maintaining and it's not doing its job. So that's where we run into problems, is then with the policing. Do we have enough money, people power in Thailand to actually enforce that regulation? We can also clean up. So now the cleanup of the air, we can reforest. Although reforest doesn't reduce the emissions, it does help absorb them. More trees in the city definitely help make a cleaner city. So here is us planting some trees actually in the middle of the city. And increase green spaces and parks in the city. We could do a lot more for that in Bangkok, but here's a new green rooftop garden that's an agricultural research station put out there by Chulalongkorn University above Siam Square 1 Mall. So all of the green space that we can add to a city will help absorb those pollutants related to smog.